Hey guys, tonight we're drifting back through the centuries, settling quietly into the heart of a city where shadows linger in narrow streets and church bells toll out the hour. It's Brussels, springtime, 5047. The air carries the sharp bite of rain and the distant musk of roasting chestnuts. Down a winding cobbled lane, lanterns sputter, struggling to push back the deep velvet night. You slip into a townhouse heavy with secrets. Here, behind thick wooden shutters, a birth is underway. The voices are hushed, tense. A midwife wipes sweat from her brow and glances toward the door, as if half expecting a knock from the Inquisition. In a small, candle-lit chamber, you, though you don't know it yet, are about to make your entrance into a world that isn't quite ready for you. Your first breath comes with a chill, the air heavy with candle smoke and the salt tang of anxiety. The woman who bears you, Barbara Blomberg, clutches you close for just a moment, her hair wild, her singing voice gone to a hoarse whisper. She's a singer, a merchant's daughter, and tonight her lullaby is a nervous murmur, lost amid the rustle of linen and the clatter of distant hooves on wet stone. And your father? Well, he's not here. That's Charles V, Holy Roman Emperor, the most powerful man in Christendom. He's got lands from Spain to Austria, fleets that stalk the coasts of the New World, and more crowns than he knows what to do with. But for all his titles, he isn't a man who can linger at a bedside. Not for a child like you. You probably won't survive this, at least not as yourself. That's the reality for a royal bastard in 1547. History isn't kind to those born in the margins. Your life already is a kind of secret. So before we go any further, if you want to support stories like Don Juan of Austria, the bastard admiral who defeated the Ottomans, go ahead and tap that like button right now. Let's see who's awake with us tonight. Post your city and local time down in the comments. The world's a wide place. It's nice to know who else is out there keeping watch while kings and queens sleep. Stick with me until the end. By the time we reach the heart of the Mediterranean, you'll know more about glory, betrayal, and the cold comfort of the sea than most princes ever dream. So let's begin. The first thing you know is the closeness of wall and arms, the gentle bounce of someone carrying you away from warmth and into the dark. There's no trumpeting birth announcement, no flurry of letters sent to noble courts, only the urgent shuffle of servants, Barbara's anxious tears as you're lifted from her arms, a purse of coins pressed into her palm, and the hollow sound of a door closing on what could have been a family. You won't remember your mother's face. Not really. Maybe a song, soft and sad, that will haunt the corners of your dreams. Barbara's hustled out of Brussels almost as soon as you're swaddled. She'll see you again, but not for years, and never as your mother in the way she longs. Her reward for bearing a king's son? Silence, anonymity, a memory of love that history will eventually scrub away. You, on the other hand, are handed off like a valuable package to a series of strangers sworn to secrecy. The first is a trusted courtier, the kind who knows when to look away and when to disappear altogether. You're bundled into a carriage under cover of darkness, rattling over the stones as Brussels recedes and the countryside takes you in. The years ahead are an odd, drifting blur. You grow up in Spain, in the heart of an empire where everything smells of incense, horse sweat, and old parchment. But your world is made of whispers and walls. You're raised in monasteries, places where the sun slants through iron-barred windows, where monks glide through corridors like shadows in heavy robes, and every footstep seems to echo with the sound of secrets. You have a name, but it isn't your true one. They call you Jeremine. It's a name that means nothing and everything. You don't question it. Children rarely do. All you know is that your tutors are kind, but distant. There's a strange, unspoken reverence in the way people treat you, a mixture of respect and sorrow. You're given the best food, the softest bed, lessons with the most learned scholars, but always there's the sense that you're a guest in your own life. Sometimes, late at night, you catch snippets of conversations through stone walls. Words like royal, illegitimate, and dangerous drift past you, as hazy as the scent of the herbs the monks burn for evening prayers. You're clever enough to piece things together. You know you don't fit. You know you're being hidden, protected, or maybe even imprisoned by kindness. Your education is relentless. Latin, Greek, history, philosophy, fencing, every day from dawn to dusk. You're shaped to be useful, not to inherit, not to rule, but to serve. Your mind is sharpened like a blade, your body drilled for battle, your soul tempered by religion. It's not a bad life. There are far worse ways to grow up in 16th century Spain. Still, you can't shake the feeling that you are being prepared for something that's just out of reach, something your teachers won't or can't explain. The walls of the monastery become your world. You know every creak of the wooden floors, every crack in the ancient plaster. You know the monks by their footsteps, by the way they sigh when they pass your cell. Some are kind, slipping you sweet figs, or whispering gentle encouragement. Others are cold, reminding you with every glance that you are not one of them. Occasionally visitors come, noblemen in fine cloaks, faces hidden in the gloom. They don't speak to you, but you feel their eyes on you as you recite your lessons or practice your swordplay in the courtyard. You wonder who they are. Spies, guardians, distant relatives. You never know. All you do know is that after each visit, your tutors become stricter, the lessons harder, the silences longer. You develop habits of your own. You watch. You listen. You learn to read people, when to speak, when to keep your mouth shut, when to press for answers, and when to let the subject drop. You learn to hide your feelings, to smile when you're lonely, to laugh when you want to cry. It's a skill that will serve you well in court, and even better on the battlefield. One day, as you're practicing fencing under the watchful gaze of your tutor, a messenger arrives. You're summoned to Valladolid, the city that hums with the business of empire. The journey is long and jolting, the landscape shifting from the green slopes of Castile to the dusty heart of royal power. You arrive at a palace that feels less like home and more like a labyrinth. Grand halls, gilded icons, guards at every door. You are led through a series of chambers, each more ornate than the last, until you find yourself standing before a tall, severe man with a beard as crisp as a blade. This is Philip II, your half-brother, King of Spain, the most Catholic monarch in Europe, and a man whose word is law. He looks at you with a mixture of curiosity and calculation. For a long moment he says nothing. Then, in a low voice, he tells you the truth. You are the son of Charles V, Holy Roman Emperor. You are a Habsburg, but you are also a bastard. There is no claim, no inheritance, no grand title, just a name. Don Juan of Austria. The truth settles over you like a new coat, strange, weighty, and oddly comforting. Suddenly, your life makes sense. The whispers, the secrecy, the relentless education. You're not nobody. You're just not allowed to be anybody important. Not officially. Philip doesn't hug you. He doesn't smile. He simply nods. And from that moment, your life changes. You're given new tutors, men of the sword and men of the book. Your education broadens. Statecraft, diplomacy, languages, mathematics, the delicate art of not saying what you mean unless you absolutely must. You meet the other princes and nobles of Spain, and you feel the sting of their eyes on you. Some pitying, some jealous, some cold, with the knowledge that no matter how skilled or charming you are, you'll never be their rival for the throne. You become a favourite of the court in the way that only a handsome, charismatic, and utterly unthreatening bastard can be. And you are handsome. Let's be honest, your mother's colouring and your father's jawline have not gone to waste. You turn heads in the palace corridors. Women smile at you, men laugh at your jokes. You're witty, clever, and just self-deprecating enough to be safe. Company. You become the court's favourite open secret. Still, there are boundaries. You are invited to hunt, but never to counsel. You're given gifts, but never lands. You're watched, always, by men whose job it is to make sure you remember who you are, and more importantly, who you are not. You throw yourself into study and sport. You become an expert horseman, a skilled swordsman, a master of languages and diplomacy. You excel because you must, because you know that your only hope for survival is to be indispensable, to be so useful that the court cannot bear to lose you, but never so ambitious that they can't bear to keep you around. You see Philip rarely, but when you do, he's distant, formal. He speaks to you as a tool, not a brother. Yet, there's a strange fondness in the way he looks at you, a glimmer of pride, perhaps. or just relief that his father's mistake turned out to be less disastrous than feared. You're not sure whether to be grateful or offended. So, as always, you keep your feelings to yourself. You develop a reputation for calm under pressure, for quick thinking and kindness to those beneath you. You're never cruel. You're never arrogant. You know too well how quickly fortunes change. You joke with the servants, listen to the soldiers, charm the ladies in waiting. You become beloved by everyone who meets you, except those who see you as a threat. And there are always those. But as you grow older, as you pass from child to youth to man, you sense the winds of fate shifting. The Ottoman Empire is pressing ever harder into the Mediterranean. Spain is facing rebellions from within and threats from without, and Europe itself feels like a kettle about to boil. You feel the restlessness in your bones. You are ready for something more. What you don't know is how soon it will come, or how high and how fast you will have to rise. You stand in the echoing halls of Valladolid, where every footfall seems to carry the weight of centuries, and you realize, finally, irrevocably, just how odd your place is in the world. You are Don Juan of Austria now, not Jeremy. You are not a secret anymore, at least not to yourself, and you try on your new name like a cloak. Some days it fits. Other days it feels like borrowed robes meant for someone else. Someone with a mother and a father. Someone with a lineage that isn't hidden in footnotes and whispers. Philip II, your half-brother and sovereign, keeps you close, but not too close. His presence is a lesson in both etiquette and caution. He's a king who measures every syllable, every pause, every shift in the wind. He expects you to do the same. With him, you learn to speak in careful riddles, to bow at precisely the right angle, to swallow your pride like a bitter medicinal draught. The palace at Valladolid is nothing like the monasteries where you grew up. There's no musty quiet, no scratch of quills or sigh of robed monks drifting through cloisters. Here, everything is vivid. Red tapestries, black armor, the glint of sunlight on polished marble. The air smells of roasted meats, beeswax and expensive perfume. Each scent another layer of the mask that the Spanish court wears at all times. You feel eyes on you everywhere. Courtiers whispering corners, their conversations folding around you like velvet. Some are genuinely curious. Who is this handsome young man, suddenly lifted from obscurity and granted a new title? Others are wary, their smiles thin and brittle. After all, you are both royal and expendable, a living reminder that even emperors are only human, subject to desires that don't fit tidy legal codes. Your education sharpens. The king's tutors are relentless. Lessons in statecraft, foreign languages, mathematics, geometry, and the tedious intricacies of European diplomacy. You spar with other young nobles, both with rapier and with wit, and it becomes clear to everyone, especially you, that your mind is quick and your reflexes quicker. You're allowed to attend court entertainments, to ride out with hunting parties, to join the younger princes at mass, but there's always a line you can't cross. A private audience that ends before real secrets are shared, a council meeting you're politely barred from, a royal tour you're never invited to join. If it bothers you, you hide it well. You have already learned to wear a mask. At night, lying on silken sheets, you replay the day's events. Sometimes you smile at your own jokes, at the way you made a duchess blush or a priest laugh in spite of himself. Other times you lie awake, listening to the distant howls of palace hounds and wondering what Barbara Blomberg is doing now. Does she think of you? Does she regret the trade she made, anonymity for your safety, coins for your absence? Occasionally, your thoughts are interrupted by the arrival of a new tutor or advisor. One, a grizzled old soldier named Rodrigo, is tasked with teaching you not only how to kill a man, but how to lead others in doing so. Rodrigo is blunt, irreverent, and possessed of the sort of humor that makes even the palace guards uncomfortable. You fight like a noble, he says, circling you during a fencing lesson. That's a compliment, unless you want to win. You parry, repop, dodge, sweat. You learn to move quietly in armor, to fight on horseback and on foot, to read a battlefield as easily as a ledger. Rodrigo teaches you to trust your instincts, but never your luck. You were born with one foot in a ditch and one in a palace, boy, he says. handing you a dripping wineskin after a day's march. You'll have to work twice as hard to stay out of both. You laugh, even as your muscles ache. The joke lands because it's true. Your other studies are less physically taxing but no less crucial. You learn to dance, awkwardly at first, then with a growing confidence. You practice the lute, memorize poems, study the art of flattery and insult. The Spanish court is a battlefield, and you're learning the rules. Charm is your armor now, wit your shield, and yet, always, there's the knowledge that you are different. Sometimes it stings, sometimes it's a blessing. At least you know where you stand, which is more than most courtiers can say. Your relationship with Philip is complicated, to put it mildly. He's a king before he's a brother, and sometimes you feel he's neither. He watches you as if you're a rare animal, beautiful but potentially dangerous. Every gesture he makes is deliberate. He gives you opportunities, but never the same ones he gives his legitimate kin. He praises you in private and ignores you in public. He laughs at your jokes, but only when no one else can hear. He assigns you tutors, horses, fencing masters and preachers, but never a mother or a father. Still, you do not complain. You are not the complaining sort. You see how quickly the fortunes of others rise and fall at court. A smile here, a snub there, and a family's fortunes can turn on a dime. You are careful, you are cautious, you are, in your own way, ambitious. You make friends where you can. Some, like Rodrigo, become genuine mentors. Others are allies of convenience. You are especially good at making yourself useful. When a feast is being planned, you recommend a favourite recipe from your monastery days. Plain fare, but wholesome. When the king's favourite falcon goes missing, you are the one who finds it, perched atop the palace roof, unbothered by the storm that frightened all the other birds. Every so often, a rumour reaches you about your mother. You hear she is living comfortably in Regensburg, that she's married a minor official, that she sometimes sings in taverns or at small court gatherings. You wonder if she thinks of you, if she has regrets, but the thought never lingers long. You have learned to live in the moment, to let the past settle behind you like dust in a sunbeam. The years tick by, your lessons intensify. Philip sends you to Granada, where the Alhambra rises above the city like a dream of lost empires, to learn about the management of estates. You study irrigation systems, Moorish architecture, the delicate balance between old Muslim communities and new Christian settlers. You are, in many ways, a living bridge between faiths, between classes, between the possible and the impossible. You begin to hear rumours about the Ottoman Turks, whispers of raids on the coasts, of galleys slipping silently through the night to burn villages and steal away with prisoners. You listen carefully, eyes narrowing, because you understand instinctively that the world is changing. The Mediterranean is no longer a Christian lake. The crescent flag flies high, and Spain's enemies are not content with shadows and skirmishes. You want to see the world. You want to fight, not for glory, but for the right to exist in it on your own terms. You are restless, caged, a thoroughbred pacing the paddock. At 20, you receive your first real command. It's not a court appointment, not a sinecure meant to keep you quiet, but a genuine test. The Alpujarras rebellion has broken out. Muslims forced to convert to Christianity. Moriscos have risen against Spanish rule in the wild, mountainous region of Granada. The crown needs someone who understands both strength and subtlety, someone who can lead soldiers but also talk to peasants. Philip chooses you. It's a gamble. If you fail, you can be dismissed, quietly, without fanfare, forgotten as so many bastards have been. If you succeed, well, maybe then you'll be more than a footnote. You travel south, leaving the cool grandeur of Valladolid behind for the rugged, sun-bleached landscapes of Andalusia. The journey itself is an ordeal. Dust chokes your lungs, horses stumble on rocky paths, and the local lords look at you with open suspicion. Who is this young man, this royal byblow, sent to solve problems too old for most men to remember? You ride through olive groves where the silver leaves shimmer in the sun, through villages where the air smells of smoke and garlic. You listen to the complaints of priests and peasants alike. You meet with rebel leaders under truce flags, standing in ruined churches, the ghost of old faiths pressing in from every stone. It is not an easy campaign. The Moriscos fight with the fury of people who have nothing left to lose. The mountains are treacherous, the valleys filled with whispers and daggers. You learn to trust your instincts, to lean on a handful of loyal captains, to act quickly and decisively when the moment calls for it. You make mistakes, of course. Everyone does, but you learn from them. You survive ambushes, negotiate ransoms, bury friends and foes alike. You earn the respect of your men, not because of your name, but because you ride at the front, share their hardships, and never ask them to do anything you wouldn't do yourself. When the rebellion finally sputters out, you're exhausted, scarred, and changed in ways you can't quite name. But you're also something new, a commander, a leader, a man whose story will not be erased by silence. You return to Valladolid, and this time when you enter the court, the whispers are different. There is still suspicion, still jealousy, but now there is something else too. Respect. Philip greets you with a measured nod. You have done well, he says, his tone almost warm. Spain owes you a debt. You bow, careful not to let your relief show. You have passed your first test, but deep down, you know it is only the beginning. Beyond Spain's borders, storms are gathering. The Ottoman navy grows bolder by the day. The Mediterranean is a chessboard, and the next move will be played not with pawns but with kings and bastards. For now, you rest, you heal, you watch, you wait. The wind from the east smells of salt and gunpowder. You know as sure as sunrise that you will soon be called again. It's a restless winter, the kind that seeps through the thickest walls and lingers in the bones long after the sun sets. Valladolid's river freezes at the edges, turning sluggish and dark, the city muffled under a heavy blanket of fog. You wander the torchlit halls, boots echoing in endless corridors, sometimes trailing a cold draught, sometimes the faint scent of roasting chestnuts from distant kitchens. The court is in a strange, expectant mood. You're no longer a secret, but you're still not quite family. The days stretch out in ceremonies and stiff dinners. The nights are quieter and longer. You learn to read every mood, every shift in tone, every flick of a courtier's eyes. Survival depends on it. Your name is spoken more often now. The Spanish nobles nod more politely. Some even greet you as Don Juan, though always with the subtle stress that marks the difference between a prince and a tolerated guest. The servants treat you well, perhaps a little too well, as if by carrying your favour they can hedge their bets against fate. You become adept at small talk and long silences. You notice everything. It's during these quiet months that Philip calls you for your first formal audience, as his brother, not just his ward. The room is enormous, its ceilings vanishing into shadows, the floor tiled in black and white. Philip sits on a raised dais, robed and crowned, his face lit only by the golden glow of candles. You bow precisely as you've been taught, and remain bowed until he speaks. Don Juan, he says, the title clear but the warmth missing. Spain needs soldiers more than it needs sons. Are you ready? You straighten, meeting his eyes for perhaps the first time as equals, if only for a breath. I am, Majesty, you reply. Careful with your words, careful not to betray either eagerness or resentment. He nods. A slight gesture, but it means everything. That's how you receive your first real assignment, not just as a noble's bastard, but as an officer in Spain's service. The order is brief. You are to travel to Granada, where the embers of the Morisco rebellion still glow hot beneath the ashes. The king wants stability. He wants unity, and perhaps he wants to see what you'll do when the stakes are no longer just your own comfort, but the peace of a region teetering between faiths. The journey south is arduous. You travel by carriage, sometimes on horseback, sometimes on foot when the roads vanish in winter mud. The landscape changes as you move, wheat fields giving way to rugged mountains, olive groves, and wild rocky ravines. You pass through villages that eye you warily. Some see a saviour, others another agent of royal authority sent to collect taxes and enforce laws. Granada itself is like nowhere you've ever seen. The Alhambra stands on its hill, a red stone dream of Moorish splendour. Its walls still bear the scars of conquest, Its gardens a strange, bittersweet harmony of Christian crosses and Islamic art. The city is a living contradiction. Catholic priests process through the streets, but the echo of the adhan, the Muslim call to prayer, seems to linger just at the edge of hearing. You spend your days meeting local lords, city officials, priests, and the occasional Morisco leader. The tension is palpable. Fear runs deep, masked by stiff smiles and polite conversation. You learn quickly that authority here is not enough. You need tact, flexibility, and sometimes raw force. Your first act as commander is not a battle, but a negotiation. You gather village leaders, Christian and Morisco alike, in a crumbling church at the edge of the city. The air is cold, and your breath steams as you listen to their complaints, their accusations, their desperate hopes for a peace that no one quite believes will last. You make promises, some you can keep and others you only wish you could. At night you walk the Alhambra's silent halls, listening to the fountains, the wind rattling the orange trees, the quiet footsteps of sentries on patrol. Sometimes you think you hear music from a distant chamber, a lute or a singer's voice. It reminds you of your mother, of a world where music was not a luxury, but a necessity. And then, inevitably, comes your first taste of violence. A band of Morisco rebels launches a raid on a Christian hamlet in the hills. You ride out at dawn, breath fogging in the sharp air, sword at your side. The roads are treacherous, bandits and rebels moving like ghosts through the olive groves. You catch up with them at the edge of a ravine, and the fight is swift, brutal, confusing. Arrows whistle past your ears. The first time you see blood spilled in your name, you taste bile. But you hold the line. You issue clear orders. You keep your men together and avoid unnecessary cruelty. Even Rodrigo, your hard-bitten mentor, nods his approval. You didn't flinch, he says that night, nursing a wound. Good, the world won't flinch for you. The rebellion drags on. It is not one war, but 100 small skirmishes, ambushes, betrayals, negotiations, tense truces that fall apart at the slightest provocation. You spend as much time in makeshift council as you do on horseback. You learn who to trust and who to watch. You make alliances, break them, patch them up again. At times you wonder if the real battle isn't in the hills, but around every table where you share bread and uneasy words with men whose loyalties shift with the wind. One icy morning, you visit a monastery turned field hospital. The wounded are everywhere. Soldiers, villagers, even a few captured rebels. The monks do what they can, but supplies are scarce. You kneel beside a boy, no older than you were when you first came to Spain. His face is pale, his hand clutching a wooden cross. You speak softly, promise him that the pain will pass. It's a lie, but a gentle one. Moments like these shape you more than any victory. You come to understand that command is as much about mercy as it is about strategy. You visit the families of the fallen. You arrange for supplies to be sent to villages on both sides. You punish your men for looting or cruelty, even when it costs you popularity. You know you're watched, weighed, judged. Sometimes, after a long day, you find a quiet corner to practice the lute. You play for yourself, for the memory of your mother, for a peace that always feels just out of reach. The music soothes you, reminds you that there is more to life than war and duty, even if only for a few stolen minutes. After months of hardship, the rebellion falters. The Morisco leaders surrender, their spirits broken by the unending grind of hunger, cold, and defeat. You accept their surrender with dignity, grant amnesty where you can, and do your best to ease the terms imposed by the crown. It is not a happy victory, but it is a necessary one. You return to Valladolid, older in ways that have nothing to do with years. The court receives you with cautious admiration. Philip praises you, offers you a seat at feasts and a place at his side, if not his heart. The Spanish nobility watch you with new respect, and the younger officers try to imitate your style, your calm, your humor, your refusal to take yourself too seriously, even when the world expects it. Word of your conduct spreads. Ambassadors write home about the bastard prince, who brings both sword and olive branch. The Pope sends a letter of commendation, and poets dedicate verses to your deeds, some accurate, some wildly exaggerated. You find it all amusing, if a bit surreal. Yet, with every honor, you sense the invisible ceiling above you. No matter how well you serve, no matter how loyally you fight, there is always a barrier, a place at the king's table, but never at its head. You accept this. What choice do you have? But you can't help but wonder how different your life would be if only the circumstances of your birth were different. In the quiet moments you remember your childhood in the monastery, the simple comfort of anonymity. The world was smaller then, safer in its way, but you are not a child anymore. The king's tasks grow more demanding, and Spain's enemies are no longer rebels in the hills, but fleets on the horizon. Philip summons you again, this time not as an officer but as a brother. Europe is changing, he tells you, eyes shadowed with concern. The Turks threaten everything we hold dear. I need men I can trust. You nod. You know what's coming. A new chapter, a new war. But for tonight, you sleep. You dream of orange trees, music and a mother's lullaby you barely remember. You wake at dawn, ready for whatever comes next. Morning in Valladolid. The city wakes with the sound of wheels on cobbles, market traders hawking onions and cheese, street urchins chasing each other past sun-bleached doorways. You're up early as always, pulled from uneasy sleep by the weight of expectation and the sharper pressure of opportunity. There's a letter on your table, a royal summons. Philip wants to see you. Again, you're accustomed to these requests. You pull on your finest doublet, dark blue velvet trimmed with silver, the outfit carefully chosen to be neither ostentatious nor forgettable. The palace is alive this morning. Guards in polished cuirasses, maids bustling with armfuls of linen, courtiers murmuring about Turkish raids and rumours from the Pope. The world feels suddenly smaller, as if everything important is being drawn toward a single point, and that point, oddly enough, is you. Philip is waiting in his study, surrounded by maps, Spain, the Mediterranean, the shadowy coasts of Africa, and beyond that, the outline of the Ottoman Empire drawn in blood-red ink. He gestures you in with that habitual flick of the wrist, part kingly command, part older brother's silent invitation. Warner, he begins, voice measured. The world is changing. The sea is no longer ours alone. He's right. The Ottomans are everywhere, raiding, blockading, threatening Venice, enslaving whole villages along the Spanish and Italian coasts. Ships disappear. Ransoms are paid in gold and tears. You nod. You know all this. Everyone at court does. But Philip's eyes are steady, calculating, searching your face for any sign of doubt. We need a new kind of leader, he continues. Someone who can unite the Catholic powers, Spain, Venice, the papacy. Someone who can command, but not threaten. Someone, he lets the sentence drift, the implication obvious. You, the bastard prince. Useful, ambitious, capable, but never a contender for the throne. He needs a hero with no claim. You hesitate only for a heartbeat before replying. If it is your wish, Majesty, I am ready. Philip doesn't smile. That would be too much like warmth. Instead, he taps a map, his ring clicking on the parchment. Go to Messina, he says. The fleets are assembling there. You will have command, but you will also have enemies. Be cautious. That's the closest you'll get to a blessing. You leave the room with your marching orders. There's no fanfare, no audience, just the familiar, private relief that comes from being trusted with real responsibility. But as you pass through the palace, the gravity of the moment sinks in. You are being sent to unite Europe's most quarrelsome powers in a crusade against the Ottomans. Every old rivalry, every hidden grudge, every backroom deal, now you must turn all of it into a weapon. You depart for Messina by carriage and then by sea, skirting the coastline of Spain, then passing the jagged shores of southern France and the bustling harbours of Genoa. You travel with a small retinue, trusted captains, a handful of Spanish soldiers, your old tutor Rodrigo, who complains constantly about the food, the weather and the local wine. Italy welcomes you with equal parts suspicion and hope. Messina itself is chaos incarnate. Dozens of warships crammed into the harbour, sailors everywhere, the air thick with the stink of tar, sweat, and anticipation. Flags from every Catholic power flap in the wind, Spanish crimson, Venetian gold, papal white, Genoese green. The city's bells ring day and night, calling men to prayer, to arms, to meals, to meet. Your first challenge is not the Ottomans, it's the Allies. Venetian admirals argue about who gets the place of honor. Spanish commanders complain about rations and pay. Genoese captains grumble about Venetian arrogance. The papal emissaries insist on special blessings, masses, and the best cabins on every flagship. You are, for all intents and purposes, herding cats. Hungry, proud, occasionally mutinous cats, each convinced their claws are sharpest. You call your first council in the echoing Great Hall of Messina's citadel. The scene is absurd. Maps and models spread across a vast oak table. Noblemen in embroidered cloaks glaring at each other over the heads of their interpreters. You listen more than you speak at first, letting them vent, complain, boast. You nod at Venetian boasts, shrug at Spanish grievances, offer small courtesies to the papal legates. Your charm is your shield, your patience your weapon. When the shouting fades, you speak quietly, directly, cutting through the noise. We are not here to remember old insults, you say. We are here to fight a war. A moment's silence, then slowly they nod. The days pass in a flurry of preparations. You walk the docks, inspecting every ship, greeting sailors in half a dozen languages. You pay special attention to the oarsmen. Many are slaves or prisoners, Christian and Muslim alike, chained in the dark below decks. You make a point of visiting their quarters, ordering better food and water, allowing priests and imams alike to minister to the desperate and the damned. The officers think you're soft. The men know better. A galley rows harder when its crew can stand. You oversee cannon drills, sailing exercises, practice landings on the rocky Sicilian beaches. You eat with your captains, listen to their complaints, absorb every grumble and suggestion. You become a constant presence on the wharves. A commander, yes, but one who knows every trick of the rigging and every cut of sail. You reward initiative, punish laziness, and when the men complain too loudly, join them in the back-breaking labor of loading supplies. You grin, flicking a crust of bread at him. Thanks for the pep talk. He grins back, the lines at his eyes deepening. Just don't forget as little people when you're a saint. Word spreads through the fleet of your efforts, your fairness, your energy, your refusal to play favourites among the Allied ships. Sailors begin to cheer your name when you pass. Even the Venetian commanders, once so quick to sneer, start to admit, in private at least, that the Spanish bastard might just be the glue holding this motley army together. There is, however, constant anxiety. Every rumour from the east is more dire than the last. The Ottoman navy is massing, their galleys ready, their commanders seasoned by years of war. Their flagship, the Sultana, is said to be the largest ship ever built. Ali Pasha, their admiral, is no fool. He's beaten Christian fleets before. He will not hesitate to do so again. You hold a final mass in Messina's cathedral. The air is thick with incense and sweat. The choir's voices soar over the heads of kneeling men. Outside, rain taps at the stained glass, and the harbour bells toll. You pray not for victory, but for courage, for clarity, for the men you'll lead and the souls you'll lose. Departure day comes at last. The fleet pulls anchor under a bruised sky, sails unfurling with the rising wind. The ships move slowly at first, the oars dipping in unison, hundreds of voices chanting, cursing, praying. The coast of Sicily slips away, the open Mediterranean yawns before you, blue, wild, indifferent to the dreams and fears of men. You pace the deck of the Real, your flagship, boots thumping on oak, the white feather in your helmet snapping in the wind. The men watch you, some with awe, some with fear, all with the desperate hope that you know what you're doing. And truth be told, you do. Or at least you fake it better than anyone else. The fleet sails east, bound for destiny or doom. The first night at sea, you stand alone at the prow, watching the moon rise. The water glitters with phosphorescence. Far astern, the lanterns of your fleet flicker like a city set adrift. You think of your father, of Barbara, of Philip, of all the ghosts whose choices led to this moment. Tomorrow there will be more councils, more disputes, more preparations. But tonight, there is only the sea, only the wind, only you. and the knowledge that everything you have survived, all the silence, all the secrecy, all the careful balancing on the edge of royal favor, has led here, to this. You smile, just a little. The stars are brighter than you remember. You think, if I die tomorrow, at least the world will know my name. And for the first time, perhaps ever, you feel ready. The wind is brisk on the open sea, the salty spray biting at your cheeks as your armada pushes east. Dawn breaks pale and pink over the blue-green waters, and for a moment you let yourself forget that you are a bastard, a pawn in royal games, a man on the edge of Europe's greatest gamble. For a moment you are only a sailor among sailors, another pair of hands on the rail, another set of eyes searching the horizon for signs of fate. You walk the length of the reel's deck, feeling the thrum of oars through the soles of your boots, hearing the creak of timbers, the calls of the officers, Spanish, Venetian, Genoese, each voice distinct, each dialect a little song of home and longing. You nod to the rowers, some chained, some free, all sweating and straining in the dark, airless belly of the ship. You offer a word of encouragement to the officers, a joke to a nervous cabin boy. This is what you have learned. Leadership is as much about being seen as it is about commanding. Each day at sea is a lesson in patience and improvisation. Your coalition fleet is a floating parliament of egos and old grudges. The Venetians are proud and prickly, convinced that the sea is theirs by birthright. The Spaniards are methodical, suspicious, prone to long prayers and longer arguments. The Genoese are shrewd traders, quick with a compliment, quicker with a complaint. The papal galleys come with priests and sacred banners, their decks a swirl of Latin hymns and incense that mingle, sometimes awkwardly, with the curses and grumbling of grizzled mercenaries. You hold councils every evening, gathering your admirals around a rough-hewn table in the captain's quarters. Maps sprawl beneath your hands, charts of the Ionian and Adriatic, sketches of Ottoman positions, lists of supplies and men. Every meeting is a test of patience and persuasion. A Venetian admiral demands the right to lead the vanguard. A Spanish captain insists his men deserve the place of honor. A papal legate wants to stop for prayers at dawn, noon and dusk. You listen. You nod. You arbitrate. You make small concessions. Never too many, never too few. You joke about giving everyone their own ocean to command. Sometimes the humor lands, sometimes it does not. You're learning to read the temperature of the room, to nudge pride and vanity toward a shared purpose. Rodrigo, always near, leans in one night and murmurs, "You ever get tired of being everyone's favorite bartender?" You flash a wry smile, only when the tips are bad. Rodrigo grunts. "Keep pouring then, lad. They need you." The days are filled with drills. Cannons are loaded and fired into the rolling surf. Archers practice on floating barrels, arrows hissing through the wind. Sailors scrub decks until they shine, polish armor until it reflects the sky. The ships maneuver in tight formation, learning to move as one. The Mediterranean is not kind to the disorganized. You visit each ship in turn, eating the same hard bread and salt pork as the men, drinking the same sour wine. You ask questions, listen to complaints, memorize the names of the best gunners and the boldest marines. It's not lost on you that many of the rowers are condemned men, some Christian, some Muslim, some who care little for God or king. To them you are neither prince nor bastard, but simply the man who decides if they will see land again. You order that they be given a little more food, a little less punishment. The officers grumble, but the oars pull harder. The nights are quieter. You sleep fitfully in your small cabin, lulled by the creak and sway of the reel. Sometimes you write letters, one to Philip, formal and restrained, one to Barbara, unsent, filled with the small private confessions a son cannot say aloud. You tell her about the sea, about the stars, about the strange peace that comes when you stand at the prow and let the salt wind fill your lungs. You wonder, sometimes, what she would say if she could see you now. Would she be proud? Would she weep? Or would she only worry, knowing that the ocean is a hungry thing, and that every journey has its price? On the fourth night, a storm sweeps in, sudden and violent. The fleet huddles together, lanterns shuttered, sails reefed tight against the screaming wind. Lightning cracks across the sky, thunder shuddering through the timbers. Men pray, curse, vomit over the rails. You stay on deck, gripping the rail, shouting orders as waves break over the bow. The reel rides high, the oarsmen straining, their chants rising above the howl. The storm passes by dawn, leaving the fleet battered but unbroken. You walk the deck in the pale morning light, checking every ship, every crew. A mast is lost, a few men gone, but the fleet holds. The men cheer your calm, your presence. A papal priest calls it a miracle. You call it luck and good oars. As the days pass, news arrives from scouts and spies. The Ottoman fleet is at Lepanto, their ships drawn up in tight formation, their numbers vast. Ali Pasha waits for you, his men eager for battle, their banners snapping in the breeze. You gather your admirals for one final council, the tension so thick it seems to warp the very air. You lay out your plan. The fleet will form into 3 divisions, each commanded by a trusted ally. Venetians on the left, Spaniards in the centre, Genoese on the right. The papal galleys and reserves will form the rear guard. The plan is simple: hold formation, break the enemy's line, focus on Ali Pasha's flagship. There is debate, of course, worries about the Ottoman numbers, their speed, their famed archers and janissaries. You listen, you weigh, you reassure. No plan survives first contact, you say, smiling. But we have faith, and steel, and each other. That is enough. The night before battle, you walk the decks, speaking to every captain, every crew. You offer a steady hand, a kind word, a small joke to break the tension. You kneel with the priests, pray for the souls of the men you will lead, and the ones you will lose. You sleep little that night, the hum of anticipation and fear vibrating through the hull. Dawn is close now, the sea glassy and still, the sky a wash of indigo and rose. The men gather for mass, the priests lifting their voices in hymns that blend with the calls of the gulls. Swords are sharpened, armor buckled, banners unfurled. You stand at the prow of the reel, the white plume of your helmet lifting in the breeze. For a moment you remember Barbara's lullabies, the soft light of monasteries, the loneliness of being both someone and no one at all. And then you let it go. Today, you are Don Juan of Austria, commander, leader, the tip of the spear. You raise your sword, the fleet surges forward. Ahead, the Ottoman banners rise, gold crescents gleaming in the sun. The greatest battle of your life is about to begin. You feel the hush sweep over the fleet as the sun edges above the horizon, gilding the restless water in a wavering blaze. The world holds its breath. For one heartbeat, there is no Spain, no Venice, no papacy, only men and ships and the wide, unblinking eye of history. This is the morning of October 7, 1571, and you, Don Juan of Austria, stand at the prow of the reel, ready to write your fate in salt and blood. You watch the line form, more than 200 warships stretching almost 3 miles across the Gulf of Patras, each one bristling with cannon braced for the oncoming storm. On your right, Gianandrea Doria commands the Genoese and Spanish right wing. To the left, Agostino Barbarigo leads the Venetians. Behind, Alvaro de Bazan holds a squadron of fresh ships in reserve. Priests bless the crews, swinging censers and sprinkling holy water that mingles with the morning dew. Sailors kneel beside their oars, lips moving in prayers to saints and mothers and forgotten gods. The air is alive with hope and dread. Then, you see them, the Ottomans. Ali Pasha's fleet is a black and gold serpent, undulating in tight formation, 300 galleys cutting the water with precise menacing grace. Their banners stream in the rising breeze, crescents blazing against a field of blue. The sound of drums and shouted orders drifts across the water, thin and sharp as steel. Their oars flash, their cannons gleam. For a moment you remember what Rodrigo told you as a boy. When the moment comes, meet it head on. Let the world see you are not afraid. You take a deep breath, feeling the eyes of thousands, friends, foes, God himself on you. You give the signal. A trumpet blares, a banner rises, and the fleet surges forward. It is like nothing you have ever seen or felt. The galleys leap ahead, oars churning, water boiling white beneath the prows. You shout orders, calm, clear, carrying across the deck, even above the thunder of drums and the barked prayers of the priests. The reel slices through the sea, leading the Christian center straight for the heart of the Ottoman line. The distance closes in minutes, though it feels like hours. The Ottoman cannons roar first, iron balls hurling arcs of spray, splinters and smoke. You duck as a shot rips past, splashing the deck with sea and shrapnel. Your men answer with a volley, the smell of gunpowder stinging your nose. Arrow storms follow, a whistling rain of wood and steel. Ships smash together with bone-shaking force. Grappling hooks fly, lines are thrown, and suddenly it is chaos. Men screaming, swords flashing, muskets flaring. The reel collides with Ali Pasha's Sultana, the two flagships crashing together like ancient titans. Your marines rush forward, led by banners and cries of Santiago and for Christ and Spain. You are not above the fray. You draw your sword, leap from the raised deck to the lower, the world narrowing to the glint of blades and the crack of pistols. You parry a Janissary's scimitar, shove another man over the rail, stumble on blood-slick planks. Rodrigo is there, bellowing curses, fighting with the strength of 10 men, his face streaked with soot. All around you, the air is thick with noise and fury. Cannonballs smashing through timbers, splinters flying like daggers, smoke curling in choking wreaths. You see Doria's right wing being outflanked by Ottoman reinforcements, but he maneuvers skillfully, refusing to break. To the left, Barbarigo is wounded by an arrow to the eye, but his Venetians fight on, pressing the Ottoman line. Back at the center, the battle for the Sultana is savage. The decks are a writhing mass of men, locked in desperate combat. You hear Ali Pasha's voice above the din, rallying his Janissaries, their white uniforms already stained crimson. You press forward, hacking, shoving, parrying, your arm numb from the force of each blow. A cannon explodes nearby, sending a shower of wood and iron through the press. You feel something graze your cheek, a hot line of pain, but you push on. The Marines around you gain ground, step by agonizing step. Suddenly you are at the entrance to Ali Pasha's cabin. A group of Spanish soldiers rush inside, swords drawn. There is a brief struggle, a shout, a crash, and then it is over. Ali Pasha is pulled from the wreckage, mortally wounded, his blood pooling on the deck. For a heartbeat, the fighting pauses. The Ottoman flagship's banner, the Great Silk Crescent, wavers, then falls. A cry rises from the Christian fleet. The enemy line shudders, but the battle is not won yet. Ottoman reinforcements charge, desperate to retake the Sultana. You turn, rally your men, drive them back with blade and pistol. Ships nearby are ablaze, the screams of the dying mingling with the roar of cannon and the crackle of fire. Through the smoke you see galley slaves, Christians, chained below deck for years, bursting free, wielding broken chains as weapons, fighting for their lives and their freedom. You find a moment to stand, breath ragged, sword dripping, watching as the Ottoman line begins to crumble. The Christian fleet presses forward. Doria's galleys sweep around the flank, trapping the enemy. Bazan's reserves charge the rear, turning confusion to rout. You look for Rodrigo. He's leaning on a broken pike, grinning through the blood on his teeth. "Still alive, lad," he gasps, and you can't help but laugh. A wild, disbelieving sound. The sea is covered in wreckage, bodies, smoke. For every cheer there are a dozen sobs, 100 prayers. You move among the wounded, offering what comfort you can. A touch, a word, a promise to remember. You order the wounded cared for, the dying blessed. You watch as the last Ottoman ships turn and flee, their banners trailing in defeat. When the guns fall silent, the quiet is shocking. It's as if the world itself is stunned, unsure whether to rejoice or to mourn. You climb to the highest point on the reel, stand beneath your battered banner, and look out over the ruined fleet. Your eyes sting from smoke and tears. You are not sure what you feel. Relief, exhaustion, sorrow, joy. Maybe all of it, tangled together in a knot you cannot hope to untie. You raise your sword in salute, not to yourself, but to every man who fought and bled and died that day. The fleet answers, a roar of voices echoing across the water, across the centuries. In this moment, you're no longer just the bastard of Charles V, the secret son, the pawn. You are Don Juan of Austria, victor at Lepanto, the man who turned the tide of history. But as the sun sets behind the shattered masts and drifting smoke, you know that victory always comes with a price. And yours is only beginning. The afternoon sun glows over the battered ships and broken bodies that litter the Gulf of Patras. Victory has a taste: salt, iron, gunpowder, and sweat. As the echoes of the last cannon fade and the water slowly stills, you stand atop the rail, boots sticky with blood and splinters, and you realize that the most dangerous part of command has just begun. Your first order is mercy. All along the battered hulls, survivors, friend and foe, cry for help. The sea is choked with flotsam, overturned galleys, and desperate men flailing for life. You call for the wounded to be hauled aboard, regardless of the flag they fought under. Venetian sailors, their arms crimson and faces streaked with tears, drag Turkish oarsmen to safety. Genoese marines pass out water and bread. Even the papal soldiers, so woke to invoke the wrath of heaven, kneel beside dying Ottomans and offer prayers in halting, broken Turkish. It's not all peace and reconciliation, of course. The wounds of battle are raw and the hunger for vengeance is strong. Some of your men, prisoners too long at the oars. Spanish veterans burned by years of war, need to be restrained from settling old scores. A papal captain, sword still sticky with blood, spits at a line of Ottoman prisoners. You step between them, hand on your sword, voice cold as winter stone. There will be no more killing today, you say, and your men listen. You are the hero now, but you are also the judge, the final word. As the smoke drifts away, the scale of the victory comes into focus. You call your captains together on the real's battered deck, a meeting not of ceremony but necessity. They gather, faces drawn, clothing torn, some missing hats, some missing teeth. You are all changed. Some, like Doria and Bazan, carry themselves with the stoic pride of survivors. Others, like Barbarigo's Venetian second-in-command, stare across the water, eyes hollow from grief. You listen to the reports of the Holy League's 200 or so ships. More than 30 have been sunk or crippled. The Ottomans have lost even more, 90 galleys sunk, 130 captured, their crews dead or scattered. The sea itself seems to groan beneath the weight of loss. Yet the Christian fleet remains. It is battered, torn, but unbroken. You have done what few thought possible. You have met the strongest navy in the world head-on, and you have won. You make sure to acknowledge every captain, every hero, every sacrifice. A Genoese archer who held his post after being shot in the shoulder, a papal oarsman who saved half his crew after their ship was rammed, a Spanish marine who dragged 5 Ottoman prisoners from the burning decks. Each story is another thread in the tapestry of your victory. Rodrigo appears at your side, face bruised, cloak stained. He leans on a broken pike, his usual grin replaced by something gentler. "You did it, lad," he says, voice hoarse. "You beat the odds." You clap him on the shoulder, more grateful for his presence than any gold or glory. Evening falls. Fires are lit on every deck, and for the first time in days, the fleet is still. Men gather around whatever food and wine can be found, telling stories, binding wounds, praying for the dead. The priests move quietly, offering last rites where needed, while sailors toss coins and bits of bread into the sea for the souls lost below. You find a moment to slip away, climbing to the stern castle and gazing out over the moonlit water. The battle has ended, but the sea is restless. Bodies drift among the wreckage, a reminder that victory is never clean, never simple. You hear the creak of the reel beneath your feet and remember the boys you once were, hiding in monastery corridors, dreaming of adventure. The boy is gone, the man remains, and he is changed forever. That night, sleep comes fitfully. The air in your cabin is thick with the sense of battle, smoke, blood, the sharp tang of fear. You lie awake, listening to the creak of timbers, the distant sound of a Venetian singing quietly to himself, the murmurs of men who cannot sleep. Your mind is full of memories, the crash of ships, the scream of the wounded, the triumphant cry as Ali Pasha's banner fell. You wake before dawn, still tired, but with the resolve that comes only after surviving the impossible. There is work to be done. Your first task is to send word of the victory. Messages are dispatched to Philip, to the Pope, to the Doge of Venice. You dictate the letters yourself, careful not to boast, careful not to claim more than you must. With the grace of God, we have prevailed. You write, the Holy League is victorious. The Ottoman fleet has been broken. You know how this news will land. Philip will be cautious, measured, pleased, but wary. The Pope will be ecstatic, a man given proof that his prayers have been answered. Venice will rejoice, her merchants and nobles seeing hope for their embattled empire. Europe, you think, will breathe a little easier tonight. Throughout the next days, you oversee the rescue and repair operations. Wounded are carried to makeshift hospitals, riggers patch sails and decks, gunners clean and rearm cannons. You walk the decks, speaking to men, offering comfort where you can, reminding everyone that the work is not yet done. The dead must be buried, the ships made seaworthy, the fleet brought home. You are everywhere at once. Commander Chaplain, and at times reluctant mourner, you make a point of visiting the rowers. Those freed from Ottoman chains, those who have spent years beneath the decks, dreaming of sunlight. Some drop to their knees as you pass, blessing you with trembling hands, tears running down their faces. You stop, always to speak with them. You are free, you say, and you mean it. The repairs take days. Some ships are too damaged to save, and you order them burned one last pyre for the dead. The flames rise against the evening sky, bright enough to be seen for miles. The men watch in silence, remembering friends lost and enemies vanquished. You call another council, this time not for strategy, but for remembrance. Names are read, prayers said, promises made to families who will never see their sons again. You order that every ship keep a record of the dead, so none will be forgotten. It is a small gesture, but it matters. In the quiet hours, as you sit with Rodrigo or wander the deck alone, you think of what comes next. Victory is a strange thing. It changes you and it changes the world. You know the Ottomans will not forget this defeat. They will rebuild, and they will return. The Holy League, too, is a fragile thing, united by fear, but divided by old wounds and new jealousies. Already you sense the shifting winds of politics. Venice wants to push east to reclaim lost lands. Spain is cautious, unwilling to risk more ships. The papacy is triumphant, eager to turn victory into sermons and saints' days. You listen, you weigh, you remind yourself that every alliance is only as strong as its purpose. For now you are their hero. Tomorrow, you may be their scapegoat. Still, for this moment, you are Don Juan of Austria, the man who defeated the Ottomans at Lepanto, the bastard who changed the fate of empires. Night falls, fires burn low, the men sleep, some for the first time in days. You remain awake, watching the stars, listening to the sea. You think of Barbara, of Philip, of Charles V. You think of all the things you have lost, and all the things you have become. Above you, the sky is clear, the stars bright. For tonight at least, you have peace. Morning arrives hesitantly on the Gulf of Patras. The sea, churned and wounded, mirrors a sky streaked with cloud and the pale promise of renewal. The remnants of your fleet sway at anchor, masts creaking, patched sails fluttering weakly in the uncertain breeze. Sleep clings to your body in heavy folds, but you force yourself awake, splashing water on your face from a bucket that still smells faintly of fish and gunpowder. You have been dreaming, again, of childhood. Brussels fog, Barbara's gentle voice, the cool hush of monastery cloisters, but you leave those memories behind as you rise. Your first act is to walk the deck, boots scuffing the blood-stained planks, nodding to the men as they work in the low dawn light. Some are already labouring, hoisting lines, patching holes, scrubbing away the evidence of battle. Others kneel in prayer, eyes closed, lips moving in thanks for survival, or in grief for what and who was lost. Your fleet is a wounded animal, but it still breathes. You assemble your officers for a quick council over a cracked table on the Real's deck. Rodrigo leans on his cane, face pale but watchful. Doria looks hollow-eyed, a bandage covering one temple. Bazan is already making lists, repairs, provisions, the distribution of captured Ottoman ships. The papal emissary clutches a rosary, his hands trembling only a little now that the worst is over. "We will not linger," you tell them, voice rough from smoke and exhaustion. "Our wounded must be treated. The living must be fed. The ships must be repaired well enough to sail." You look each man in the eye, letting the weight of your words settle. "And we must get news to Europe. The Holy League endures. Plans are drawn up. Crews are reassigned. The most seaworthy ships designated for the journey home. You order the worst casualties transferred to the hospital galleys. Papal surgeons moving quickly among the hammocks and makeshift cots. The dead are given as much dignity as the sea allows. Sailors fashion shrouds from torn sails, sew them closed with rough hands, and whisper final prayers as bodies are consigned to the deep. It is not only the Christian dead who are mourned. Ottoman prisoners, too, are given water, bread, and a chance to speak to a priest or imam. You make it clear, vengeance is for the battlefield, not the aftermath. Your men, even the most hardened, comply. Some grumble, but most are too tired to object. They've seen enough of death. For the next 2 days you work relentlessly. You oversee the distribution of spoils, cannons, coins, silks, and even a few rare surviving horses. You see that every surviving galley slave, Christian or otherwise, is released from the hold and given their first true meal in years. The sight of so many gaunt faces blinking at the sun brings an ache to your chest. You cannot describe. A few kneel before you, muttering thanks in half-forgotten tongues. One, a bearded Venetian, presses your hand to his forehead and sobs with the joy of freedom. Another, an old Moorish sailor, simply nods and limps away, silent but alive. Word spreads quickly through the fleet. Don Juan remembers the lowliest. Don Juan rewards loyalty and mercy. Your legend, already swelling, grows by the hour. You receive a letter from Philip II's messenger, brought by a small, swift brigantine. The words are careful, measured. The king congratulates you on your victory, praises your courage and wisdom, but he is Philip. There is caution, even a note of warning. Your glory is Spain's, he writes. Remember always that you serve not yourself but the Lord and his crown. You smile, reading between the lines. A reminder, you are valuable, but also dangerous. A beloved bastard is always, in the end, expendable. You draft your reply, formal, gracious, almost painfully humble. With God's help, your Majesty's fleet has prevailed, you write. The Holy League stands united. The sea is safer for now. I await your further commands. A handful of Venetian and papal letters arrive as well. The Doge's script is flamboyant, dripping with gratitude. The Pope's message is more effusive. He credits your leadership as an instrument of divine will, promises new indulgences for your men, and asks for a full account of the battle for the archives of Rome. You assign a scribe to prepare copies of your report. No easy task, given the carnage and confusion. Every captain submits a version of events. Some wildly dramatic, some dry as a sailor's biscuit. You read them all, distilling the facts from the fever dreams of battle. As your officers coordinate the last repairs, you find a quiet hour to walk the deck alone. The Real creaks beneath you, its sides patched and scarred, but still afloat. A ship with 9 lives, much like yourself. You watch the sun glint off the armor of Venetian marines as they clean blood from their swords. You hear Spanish sailors singing a low, mournful tune, their voices rising and falling like the tide. From a nearby galley, a papal priest recites a Latin psalm, the words threading through the air like incense. You find Rodrigo sitting on a coil of rope, sharpening a knife with slow, steady strokes. He looks up as you approach, one eyebrow raised. You look tired, lad, he says, voice soft. You smirk. I am tired, old friend. Tired and lucky. He nods. Luck favors the prepared and the brave. Don't forget that. You sit beside him, the silence between you filled with the sounds of a living fleet. the slap of waves against hulls, the clatter of repairs, the distant laughter of men who have survived another day. Rodrigo leans closer, lowering his voice. Remember this one. Victories fade, friends fade, even kings fade. But what you did here, what you gave back to those men, freedom, hope, a reason to keep fighting, that's the only immortality worth chasing. You nod, feeling the truth of it settle in your chest. That night, as the last fires burn down and the stars blink awake overhead, you stand at the stern and let yourself dream. Not of thrones or banners, but of peace, of music, of a mother's arms. You wonder what your father would say, what Barbara would think. You wonder if Philip, reading your letters in a palace hundreds of miles away, can ever truly understand what it means to be both royal and rootless, both necessary and unwanted. You know that this peace cannot last. Even as you prepare to sail home, you sense new storms gathering. The Ottomans will rebuild, the Holy League will fracture, old enemies will become rivals again, and your moment of unity will become just another memory, another chapter in the never-ending story of Europe's wars. But for tonight, there is rest. For tonight you are just a man among men, a survivor, a witness, a leader who did not flinch when the world demanded everything. You lie in your hammock, listening to the soft lapping of the waves, the quiet breathing of men asleep. You close your eyes, letting the sound carry you back through memory, through longing, through the long corridors of your life, to that first breath in Brussels, to the soft hush of a mother's lullaby, to the hope that somewhere, somehow, you will find a place to belong. You rise once more. It's time to go home, or at least to the place that calls itself home for a man like you, a son with no inheritance, a prince with no principality, a victor whose reward is always measured and never quite certain. The orders come at dawn, scribbled in haste by your own hand, then copied and distributed across the battered fleet. We sail for Messina. Make all haste. The fleet stirs to life. The deck's a confusion of voices and boots and ropes and sails unfurling in the uncertain morning breeze. Your flagship, the Real, leads the way, her hull patched, her paint scarred by fire and salt, her men running on a mixture of exhaustion and adrenaline. You're not much for ceremony, but you take a moment before departure. You stand at the prow, boots planted wide, the wind tugging at your black cloak and white-plumed helmet. All eyes are on you, from captains to cabin boys. You say nothing. You only raise your sword, a silent signal, a gesture of unity and promise. The men cheer, a ragged but powerful sound that rolls over the water and bounces off the cliffs. Rodrigo stands at your elbow, a rare solemn smile creasing his scarred face. On your word, Don Juan, he says softly. You nod. Let's take them home. The galleys slip their moorings, oars dipping in perfect rhythm, sails catching the rising wind. Messina is hundreds of miles away, but for the first time in days, the prospect of land, of rest, of anything resembling normalcy feels real. The first hours are tense. Men watch the horizon for Ottoman sails, nerves fraying at every shadow, every trick of the light. But the enemy is gone, their navy shattered, their survivors limping eastward to lick their wounds. The threat for now is behind you. Your thoughts turn inward as the coastline slips by, bays, promontories, the distant outline of mountains. You remember the first time you sailed these waters as a boy, crammed in a crowded galley, wondering if you'd ever know freedom or purpose. Now you ride at the head of a victorious armada, but the old questions remain. What comes next? Who will you be, now that your greatest enemy has been beaten? As you approach the docks, the cheers rise, a wild, joyous sound that makes your heart twist in your chest. For once you let yourself smile, wave, bask in the simple, primal joy of survival and victory. Rodrigo elbows you, smirking. Enjoy it, lad. It won't last. You laugh, knowing he's right. Disembarkation is chaos. Wounded carried on stretchers, priest offering blessings and thanks, mothers weeping over sons returned from death's door. You walk the docks, shaking hands, offering a word here, a pat on the back there. Soon enough, the dignitaries arrive. Venetian envoys in silks, papal cardinals in scarlet, Spanish grandees in black and gold. Each brings messages, praise, demands for audiences. You are paraded through the streets, banners waving overhead, petals and confetti raining down from balconies. You are the guest of honor, and everyone wants a moment with you. The Doge's ambassador, the Pope's messenger, captains from every corner of the fleet. Each speech is more effusive than the last, and you nod, thank, deflect. You make toasts to unity, to victory, to those we lost and those who brought us home, and for a little while you let the joy of the city fill you, drive away the fatigue and worry. But even as you bask in the warmth of the crowd, you can feel the first chilly gusts of rivalry and ambition stirring around the tables. The Venetian Admiral speaks a little too proudly of his city's crucial role. The Spanish commanders hint at the cost, at the blood their men shed. The papal legate reminds everyone that it was faith, not steel, that won the day. Alliances are always easiest when the enemy is at the gates. Now, with the enemy broken, old suspicions slip back into the room like unwelcome ghosts. You sense it most sharply when the subject of the spoils arises. Who will keep the captured Ottoman galleys? How will the prisoners be divided? What of the gold, the silks, the artillery? You try to play mediator, reminding each side of the cost of division, the risk of letting pride poison victory. Some listen, others don't. It is a dance you know all too well, the dance of compromise, of soothing bruised egos, of holding together a coalition stitched with threadbare trust. After the feast, you escape to the harbour wall, needing air, needing space. The sea glows with moonlight. The ships at anchor a forest of silent masts. Rodrigo joins you, silent for a time, then clearing his throat. "Did you ever think you'd see this day?" he asks. You shake your head. "I dreamed of it, but I never dared believe." He grins, teeth white in the darkness. "That's the trick, lad. Dream, but never trust the dream to last." You nod, understanding. You both know the tides of fortune turn quickly. Today's hero is tomorrow's scapegoat. The next morning, you rise before dawn and visit the hospitals, makeshift wards crowded with the wounded, tended by nuns, priests, and hurried doctors. You thank every man you can, offer comfort where you can't. You see the price of victory written on faces drawn with pain, hear it in the whispered prayers for sons who did not return. You arrange for the worst off to be sent to better facilities in Naples and Palermo, personally seeing to their transport. You order that every name dead or alive be recorded, that every family be notified. You send messages to Barbara in Regensburg, to Philip in Madrid, to every corner of Europe that matters. You spend hours drafting your official account of the battle for the king and for the Pope. Careful, truthful, a balance of fact and humility. You know that every word will be weighed, every phrase examined for ambition or overreach. You are proud, but you are cautious. It is a difficult dance, and one you have learned too well. For weeks, Messina celebrates. The bells ring, the markets bustle. The artist paints your portrait 100 times, always a little taller, a little more heroic than life. Children parade in makeshift armor. Girls weave garlands of olive and laurel. For a brief, shining moment, the city seems united, joyous, healed. The celebrations end. The letters arrive. Philip calls you to Naples to consult on the next phase of the war. The Pope invites you to Rome for a special blessing, promising to inscribe your name among the heroes of Christendom. The Doge sends an artist to immortalize you in Venice's grandest hall. But the sea calls you too, the low hum of the waves, the scent of salt and wood and freedom. You spend your last night in Messina alone, walking the empty wharves, listening to the wind and the distant sound of music from the city's taverns. You think of the men you lost, the friends you buried, the families you will never know. You think of Barbara, far away, perhaps waiting for a letter, perhaps only for a memory. You think of Philip, king, brother, sometimes stranger, and wonder what role you will play in his next game. Above all, you think of tomorrow. You turn your back on the harbour, your face toward the rising sun. Your next chapter waits. The summons from Naples comes before the celebrations in Messina have even faded. It arrives with a royal seal, a courier breathless from the urgency of his journey and the importance of his burden. You leave Messina with mixed feelings. The harbour fades behind you, its garlands drooping, its songs trailing away over the wind. The fleet is smaller now, leaner, Some ships sent ahead, others scattered for repairs, a few lost forever to the sea's appetite. Your journey across the Tyrrhenian is uneventful. The weather is fair, the men restless, the horizon a thin, unbroken line. Naples, when it comes into view, is a city of pale stone and red-tiled roofs, sprawled along the crescent of its bay. Vesuvius looms in the distance, smoke rising in a lazy spiral from its crown. The port is crowded, the air thick with the mingled scents of salt, spices and wood smoke. Philip's instructions are waiting, sealed, heavy, the script as rigid as the man himself. You open them alone in your quarters, the light of afternoon filtering through coloured glass, painting the walls in stripes of red and gold. Prepare for further campaigns, ensure the discipline of the fleet, curb the ambitions of Venice, confirm the loyalty of the Italian lords. A list, but also a test. Can you manage not only war but peace, not only battle but politics? You begin at once. Sometimes you find yourself wishing for the honest violence of battle over the treacherous tides of negotiation. In quieter hours, you stroll through the city, sometimes alone, sometimes with Rodrigo. You walk the narrow alleys, where children chase stray dogs and women bargain for lemons and sardines. You are recognized everywhere. Some bow, some salute. A few, emboldened by wine or simple gratitude, call your name and beg you to bless a child, to kiss a holy relic, to accept a gift of bread or fruit. You are gracious, careful, never allowing pride to show, though inside you feel the pride, deep and warm, and let it buoy you against the doubts and jealousies that cling to power. You spend nights in council, drafting new plans, reading reports, answering Philip's endless queries. You write to Barbara too, careful letters filled with small, domestic details, how the sea looked at dawn, how the Neapolitan children sang in the streets, how you remembered her lullabies in the hush before battle. Still, there are moments of respite. A feast in the Viceroy's palace, a riot of colour and flavour, tables groaning with fish and game, musicians playing lutes and shawms, dancers swirling in silks, a procession to the cathedral, the bishop intoning prayers for the fallen, the crowds pressing close to touch your cloak, an evening ride along the bay, Rodrigo recounting stories of battles lost and won, both of you laughing beneath the wide Neapolitan sky. But politics is a patient enemy. Venice is restless, eager to press east and retake lost islands. The Pope wants new crusades, more miracles. Spain wants security, not adventure. You play the peacemaker, the mediator, the glue that holds the alliance together. You remind each side of the cost of disunity, the threat still lurking in the east. Some listen, others only pretend. And always, there is Philip watching from afar, his letters probing, questioning, sometimes even praising, but never forgetting your birth, your lineage, your position. You feel the weight of the name you were given and the one you had to earn. Don Juan of Austria, the man who won at Lepanto, the bastard who cannot inherit, the prince who must always be careful. Are you happy, Juan? Rodrigo grins. Enough for most, but not for you, I think. You look away, smiling. Maybe he's right. Outside, the bells of Naples toll the hour, the city shifting and murmuring in the night. You remember Brussels, your first breath, your mother's arms, the uncertain hush that has followed you all your days. You remember Messina, the cheers, the banners, the scent of hope and fear. You finish your wine, grateful for the warmth. Tomorrow, you will return to your duties. You will arbitrate, negotiate, command. You will be Don Juan, always in the service of something greater, always watching for the next wave, the next test. Tonight, for just a moment, you let yourself be simply Juan, a man who has survived, who has led, who will keep leading, whatever the world may ask. You settle into Naples like a guest who can never quite unpack. Each day brings a new audience, a new crisis, a new dispatch from Madrid or Rome. Philip's messages come every week now, meticulously penned, polite but edged. He praises your judgment, your discipline, the unity you inspire. Yet, every letter is a test, every praise a reminder. You serve Spain, you serve the crown, you serve the Habsburg name, but not as its heir. Your victories have made you famous. Naples nobility parade you at dinners. Bishops insist you kneel for blessings. Old soldiers tell you their stories in crowded squares. Children try to touch your sword. Women pass you secret notes in the shadow of the cathedral. You laugh, thank them, keep your distance. There is power in charm, but greater danger in being adored. The city itself is vibrant and unruly, alive at every hour. Its streets twist like the intrigues of court markets bursting with colour and chaos. Hills layered with villas and shanties alike. Churches echoing with Latin and Neapolitan prayers. Every corner seems to promise both threat and delight. Rodrigo, never at ease among marble and manners, prefers the waterfront, where the air is thick with salt and the talk is of fish, storms and the ever-present fear of pirates. Most mornings, you begin with a ride. You take Rodrigo and 2 guards, winding through sleepy alleys, out past city walls into the green hills, or down to the shore where fishermen mend nets by moonlight. Here, away from protocol and politics, you can almost breathe. Reports arrive. The Ottomans, battered but unbroken, are already rebuilding their fleet. Rumours swirl of new alliances among Muslim corsairs and North African princes. Venice sends envoys pleading for another offensive, hungry to retake lost islands and trading posts in the eastern Mediterranean. The Pope's legate urges a crusade, his voice rising in every council. God has given us Lepanto, but will judge us if we rest. You hold council after council, the great table always crowded with maps, complaints and cups of cold wine. You listen more than you speak, letting the admirals and envoys argue. The Venetians demand, the Spaniards caution, the Genoese scheme, the papal men posture. You learn to read the current beneath their words, the ambitions, the grievances, the thinly veiled threats. You remind them, always, of the cost of division. We beat the Ottomans together. We hold the sea together, or we lose it alone. Sometimes they listen. Sometimes you see calculation flicker in their eyes, a silent weighing of how long the Holy League will last, now that its great enemy is in retreat. Rodrigo finds the whole thing hilarious. You could marry twice and not silence them, he snorts. One night as you walk the starlit quay, both of you wrapped in cloaks against the sea wind, give them what they want, and they'll only want more. You chuckle. I'd need 12 lives to please them all. He grins, teeth flashing in the dark. Better 12 enemies than 12 mothers-in-law. Despite the banter, the politics gnaw at you. You know you are being watched by Venice, by Rome, by Madrid most of all. Lepanto has made you a hero, but also a problem. For Philip, you are both a loyal servant and a potential rival. Every rumour, every toast in your honour, every story embroidered by the poets is another stone on the scale. It's no secret that the soldiers love you. The men who rode and fought at Lepanto write home of your courage, your fairness, your refusal to hide behind rank. Word spreads, priests speak of you in sermons. Old veterans raise your health in smoky taverns from Naples to Lisbon. You walk the markets, and the crowd parts for you. Not out of fear, but respect. Yet, you never let yourself forget what you are. Barbara's son. Charles's secret. Philip's too. You keep busy. There are inspections, training sessions, long rides to distant forts. You review the fleet, count the ships, check the cannons, watch the men drill on the beaches. You host dinners for your captains, listening to their stories, drinking gis enough to put them at ease, never enough to let your tongue slip. You write often, letters to Philip, careful and correct, reports to the Pope and Doge, full of facts but never boasting, notes to your mother, filled with the ordinary details of daily life. You never mention the loneliness, the uncertainty, the dreams that come on restless nights, dreams of childhood, of nameless safety, of a family you barely remember. On Sundays you attend Mass at the great cathedral, kneeling with the common folk, listening to the organ thunder and the choir soar. For a few minutes you let yourself believe in absolution, but absolution is for others. For you, there is only the work, the endless balancing act. As the weeks pass, rumours multiply. The Ottomans, stung by defeat, are refitting their galleys in Constantinople. Spain and Venice squabble over their next moves. The Pope presses for another grand campaign. Your officers grow restless, eager for action, for reward, for the next taste of glory. One evening, as you sit with Rodrigo overlooking the darkened harbour, you confide what you have not told anyone else. "Sometimes I think Lepanto was the easy part," you say, voice low. "You face the enemy, you fight, you win, or you die. This," you gesture at the city, the palace, the endless rounds of council and compromise. "This is harder." Rodrigo nods, his eyes softening. "It always is, lad. Swords are easy, people never." You rise at dawn the next day, the city still quiet, and ride out to the edge of Naples, where the hills drop away to the sea. You watch the sunrise, the sky ablaze with pink and gold. For a moment, you allow yourself to hope, maybe, just maybe, the peace will hold. But in your heart, you know better. The world is turning. The Ottomans will come again. The alliances will shift. The courts will whisper. The king will always doubt. You mount your horse and turn back to the city, to the palace, to the endless, beautiful, terrible business of living with victory and all that it demands. A winter of celebration gives way to a spring of tension. Naples, for all its glamour, grows restless in the wake of your triumph. Word of Lepanto's victory echoes down every street, swelling with each retelling. Minstrels sing of it on bustling market corners. Fishermen argue over details as they untangle nets. Friars thunder from pulpits that God's favour now rests squarely on Christendom. Your name is a blessing on the lips of mothers, a boast for grizzled veterans, a sigh on the tongues of hopeful young girls. It would be easy to lose yourself in the adulation, to let the glow of triumph soften the hard outlines of caution. You move through these days with care. For every door flung wide, there is a closed council chamber where old wounds fester. In every toast to your victory, you sense the undertone of envy, of fear, of calculation. Naples is a city of masks, and in its labyrinth of alleys and palaces, everyone wears at least two. The Holy League, victorious at Lepanto, is now a fractious thing. The Pope's legate pushes for a swift new crusade. Venice insists on immediate attacks to reclaim Cyprus and other lost territories. Spain, your brothers, Spain, urges patience, consolidation, the gathering of more ships and supplies. Each side is suspicious of the others, each determined to seize the greatest share of glory and loot. You spend your days in endless negotiation, trying to keep peace among men who, without a common enemy, would just as soon slit each other's throats as share a table. You become in many ways a symbol more than a commander. At every meeting, your presence is demanded. Don Juan of Austria, the young Admiral, the Prince of Victory. The letters from Philip grow colder, more frequent, their subtext sharper. He praises your efforts, then warns you not to overreach. He asks your opinion, then directs your actions. He congratulates you on your wisdom, then reminds you that your power is borrowed. Each page is a dance, a step forward, a step back, always within the boundaries set by the crown. You respond with the same careful restraint. You describe the state of the fleet, the mood of the Allies, the rumours of Ottoman rebuilding. You offer advice without presumption, reassurance without boast. You know the cost of overstepping, the danger of seeming indispensable. Beneath the surface, trouble simmers. News arrives from the east. The Ottomans are rebuilding, their shipyards alive with hammer and saw. In Venice, merchants whisper of new raids, lost convoys, the growing presence of Turkish corsairs off Crete and the Ionian coast. In Naples, your days follow a pattern. Meetings, inspections, letters, diplomacy, the endless effort of holding together a fragile coalition. Your nights are lonelier. The palaces are filled with light and laughter, but you often slip away early, seeking the solace of the waterfront, the shadowed gardens, the quiet chapel at the far end of the cathedral, where no one thinks to look for a hero. One evening, you receive a visitor. The messenger is Genoese, young and nervous, clutching a letter sealed with Venetian wax. You open it in silence, reading the Doge's careful script. He asks you, formally but urgently, to support Venice in a new campaign to recover their lost islands in the east. The Pope's blessing is ready. All that is needed is your leadership. You hesitate. To strike east is to risk everything: the fleet, the alliance, your own hard-won reputation. Yet, to refuse is to risk losing the trust of Venice, and perhaps of Rome. You send a reply, diplomatic and non-committal. The unity of Christendom remains my highest goal, you write. We must act as one, or not at all. Privately, you consult Rodrigo. He is blunt as ever. Venice wants her empire back, and the Pope wants another miracle. But your brother wants you here, safe, obedient, close at hand. You sigh, running your hands through your hair. Sometimes I think all I do is disappoint someone. He grins. Welcome to command, lad. The trick is to disappoint everyone equally. You laugh, the tension easing for a moment. The next day, you meet with your admirals, reviewing plans for a possible campaign. The mood is restless. Everyone senses the old unity slipping away, replaced by the familiar scramble for advantage. You work late into the night, drafting proposals, balancing egos, reminding each man of what is at stake. But you cannot escape the slow unraveling of the Holy League. Word comes from Rome that the Pope is growing impatient. Venice sends more envoys, their demands edged with desperation. Philip's letters grow even more insistent, instructing you to delay, to hold, to wait for his word. You walk the city streets, searching for answers, for certainty. You visit the wounded in the hospitals, listen to their stories, their hopes, their prayers. You ride beyond the city walls, seeking the peace of the countryside, the sweep of vineyards, the hush of olive groves, the promise of another world beyond the reach of kings. Yet, even here, politics follows you. Local lords petition you for favors. Merchants ask for protection. Priests request relics and donations. You are needed everywhere, yet truly wanted nowhere. You spend more time with Rodrigo, grateful for his unvarnished advice. You talk of the future, of what comes after Lepanto, of the man you wish to be, the life you might have had. He reminds you that every victory is fleeting, every glory a double-edged sword. There are worse things than being needed, Juan, he says one night, as you sit watching the city lights flicker on the bay. Just remember who you are when the crowd stops cheering. You nod, watching the moon rise over Naples. For a moment you allow yourself to hope that peace might last, that the bonds forged in battle might survive the lure of gold, of pride, of old enmity. But you know, as all soldiers do, that hope is a luxury paid for in vigilance. A summons arrives, another council, another round of arguments, another test of patience. You dress carefully, don the armor of diplomacy, and step into the light, ready to face whatever storm awaits. For tonight at least, you are still Don Juan de Austria, leader, survivor, the man who for a single shining moment held the fate of empires in his hands. It is not war that ages you now, but the long, slow battle for peace. Spring deepens into summer, and with it, Naples becomes a crucible of rumour, ambition and uncertain purpose. The markets overflow with oranges and melons. The air is thick with scents of roasting meat and fresh-cut basil. Laughter echoes from tavern courtyards at night. Music drifts from open windows. But beneath it all, a tension lingers. The Holy League's victory at Lepanto has changed the balance of power, but peace proves as difficult to keep as war. Your days are a whirl of council meetings and audiences. You rise at dawn, already feeling behind, already aware that somewhere in the palace a Venetian envoy is arguing with a Spanish captain, or a papal messenger is demanding another audience with you. Letters pile on your desk, some marked urgent, others coded in the subtle, elegant ways of diplomats who have survived 100 intrigues. There is always another request for aid, another warning about Ottoman shipyards, another subtle prod from Philip to maintain the dignity of the Spanish crown at all costs. Yet you persist. If command on the battlefield was a test of courage and quick thinking, command in the aftermath is a study in endurance and balance. You host dinners where every word is weighed, you arbitrate disputes over plunder and prisoners, you negotiate truces that seem to last only as long as the ink is wet. Your fame, so bright in the first days after Lepanto, has become a lantern that draws both moths and wasps, old rivals, new flatterers, every kind of petitioner. One afternoon you stand on the palace balcony overlooking the harbour, the Mediterranean glinting in the sunlight. Rodrigo joins you, his limp more pronounced, his eyes sharper than ever. "You're running yourself ragged, lad," he says, squinting at the ships below. "I'm holding the league together with promises and parades," you reply. "Some days I think the wind could scatter us all," he grunts. "Or one jealous king." You both know what he means. Philip's letters are warmer now. Praise, thanks, a promise of honours to come. But there is always a question behind the words. Are you loyal? Are you getting too popular? Does Christendom need a hero or just a servant? Your answer is always the same. Obedience, humility, caution. It is the only safe path, and even that is lined with thorns. But you do not complain. Instead, you do what you have always done. You walk among the men. You visit the galleys at dawn, surprising the rowers and marines with your presence. Some are recovering from wounds. Others are new recruits drawn by tales of Lepanto's glory. You speak with them in their own languages, Spanish, Italian, broken Greek, even a little Turkish. You ask about their families, their homes, the little things that keep a soldier's heart tethered to the world. It is here, among the men, that you feel most yourself. Their gratitude is real, their worries honest, their hopes unvarnished. They do not care about your lineage, only that you led them well and brought them home. You take note of every complaint about food, about pay, about a missing letter from home, and you do what you can to fix it. Sometimes that means nothing more than a kind word. Sometimes it means a hard order to a corrupt officer or an overworked surgeon. You eat with the captains, share stories, listen to their frustrations. You join them for mass in the cramped ship's chapel, kneeling beside men whose faith is simpler and stronger than the Latin prayers that echo from the marble cathedrals. You attend the funerals of the last to die from their wounds, making sure every family receives word, every comrade a chance to mourn. Rodrigo watches you, sometimes shaking his head in disbelief. "You're building an army that loves you," he says. "That's dangerous." You shrug, knowing it is true. Better love than fear. Fear rots the bones. He grins. And love makes fools of us all. In the palace, meanwhile, the politics grow sharper. Venice presses harder for another campaign. Their ships are ready, their generals eager for new spoils. The papal legate brings fresh blessings, but also more pressure. Rome expects miracles, expects you to carry the cross of Christendom again and again. Philip, always watching, counsels delay, patience, suspicion of Venetian motives. You walk the tightrope with practiced skill. At every council, you praise your allies, remind them of the victory won together. You deflect calls for immediate war with the promise of careful preparation, more ships, more money, more time. You offer to inspect the Venetian fleet yourself, to hear the grievances of every admiral and captain. You even suggest a pilgrimage to Rome to seek the Pope's blessing in person, a clever way to buy time while appearing devout. Some nights, you host small gatherings, just your closest officers, Rodrigo, a few trusted Neapolitan friends. Here, you allow yourself to relax. The conversation turns to home, to childhood, to dreams left behind. You sing old songs, play the lute, even laugh until your sides ache. For a few hours, you are not the hero, not the diplomat, not the bastard with too much fame. You are simply Juan, surrounded by men who know the cost of glory. You write to Barbara more honestly than ever. You tell her of the weariness, the constant balancing act, the loneliness that creeps in at the edges of celebration. You tell her of the men you've met, the lives you've changed, the moments when you've almost believed you could be happy. You ask about her own life, about the songs she still sings, about the memories she holds of a boy who was never quite hers. As summer blazes, Naples grows restless. News comes that the Ottomans have launched fresh raids on Venetian and Spanish outposts. Merchant ships disappear in the Aegean. Word spreads that a new sultan is stirring, promising revenge for Lepanto, vowing to restore the pride of the Crescent. The League's admirals gather in the palace, the great hall buzzing with anxious energy. Venice argues for action. Spain urges caution. The papal men demand unity in the name of God. You preside, weighing every word, every gesture, every flicker of ambition in their eyes. You remind them gently, firmly, that victory at Lepanto was not the end, but only a beginning, that the sea is not won forever, and that division will hand it back to the enemy. You propose another round of joint maneuvers, a show of force to remind the Ottomans that the League endures. Some agree, some grumble, some plot in corners, thinking you do not see. You see everything. You feel the fault lines widening, but for now the League holds. Do you ever wish you could walk away, lad? He asks. You consider the question. Sometimes you do dream of vanishing into the hills, finding a farm, a family, a quiet life far from banners and crowns. But you shake your head. This is who I am, you say. I can't unmake the world. You nod, watching the stars come out. For a moment, you believe you might. Tomorrow, there will be more councils, more letters, more demands. But tonight, for a few precious hours, you are at peace with yourself, with your friend, with the world you have helped shape. August burns Naples to its foundations, sun blazing on the domes, shadows pressed flat against marble steps, the city humming with a restless energy that is equal parts hope and dread. The crowds still cheer your name, but their eyes are sharper now. The priests preach victory, but worn of pride. The nobles toast your courage, but count their own coins, and measure your power with a careful envy. In every courtyard and tavern, rumours ripple. New wars, new betrayals, whispers that Philip is watching you more closely than ever. You live in motion, always between audiences, always weighed down by expectation. Your days begin before dawn, when the air is cool and the city is quiet enough to think. You rise, wash in cold water, dress with a soldier's economy. Rodrigo joins you for a meagre breakfast. Bread, figs, a little cheese. Then you ride out, the city waking around you, dogs barking, children running, fishmongers calling the catch of the day. You visit the hospitals first. There are always wounded from one campaign or another, soldiers from Lepanto still struggling to heal, new casualties from skirmishes with pirates, or the latest riots among the conscripted rowers. From there, you make your way to the shipyards. The summer sun bakes the docks, the wood creaking, pitch bubbling between the planks. You review the work. New galleys under construction, old hulls patched and tarred, cannons stacked like blackberries, ready to be loaded and stowed. These councils are exhausting. You play your role to perfection, patient, measured, gently humorous when needed, stern when you must be. You remind them that unity is fragile, that glory is fleeting, that every decision is written in the blood of men who must actually fight. Sometimes you win a concession, more often you delay a disaster. The pressure is relentless. You sense yourself fraying at the edges, sleeping less, eating little, haunted by the memory of battle and the endless, gnawing tension of peace. Rodrigo sees it. You write to Barbara, your words spilling onto the page with a candor you dare not show the world. You tell her of the weight on your shoulders, the suspicion in every glance, the joy you feel when you remember you are still her son. No matter what the world calls you, you ask about Regensburg, about the rivers and the songs of your childhood, about the quiet hopes she still holds for you, far from war and politics. At court, intrigue thickens. A rumour reaches you. Philip is considering sending another royal cousin to Naples, someone to assist you to share the burden. You understand the meaning at once. A leash, a spy, a rival to dilute your authority. You take the news with a calm smile, thanking the messenger, but inside you feel the slow burn of old anger, old disappointment. You remember the cold calculation in Philip's eyes, the way your triumphs are always balanced against your birth. Rodrigo, when you tell him, laughs so hard he nearly spills his wine. Let them come. You'll have them cleaning stables by week's end. But beneath the humour you are wary. The court is a forest of daggers, and you have learned to walk softly. Summer lingers, but the tension grows. Venice demands action, a new crusade, a strike at the Ottoman ports in Greece or Dalmatia. The Pope's legate urges another mass, another parade, another call for volunteers. You think of Barbara, of the monastery where you learned your letters and your prayers, of the boy you once were, a boy with no name, no history, no burden but survival. No, you say at last. I would not trade it, but I would give anything to belong, truly belong, just once. Rodrigo nods, and for a moment the night is silent but for the distant surge of the waves against the breakwater. You return to your room and write a final letter before sleep claims you, your pen scratching out words in the moonlight. You write not as Don Juan, not as the victor of Lepanto, not as a prince or a bastard or a legend. You write as a son. When dawn comes, you are ready, tired, yes, but ready for whatever the day will demand. August passes, the city changes. The air cools, the markets grow quiet, and the first rumours of a new Ottoman fleet reach Naples. The world will not let you rest. The air in Naples grows taut as a drawn bow. September brings a promise of rain, but the sky holds back, pressing its heavy silence over the city like a shroud. All summer, rumours have eddied through the courts and markets, each more insistent than the last. The Ottomans are moving, the Sultan is restless, new ships crowd the Golden Horn, and galleys from Barbary prowl the night coasts like wolves. Your officers watch the horizon with hungry eyes, eager for the next great trial, the one that might secure their names beside yours in the annals of history, or erase them forever in an instant of fire and iron. You feel the tension everywhere, in the short tempers of merchants haggling at the docks, in the clipped tones of courtiers jockeying for influence, in the veiled questions of the Spanish envoy who brings yet another sealed letter from Philip. That old chill has returned to your brother's words. Remain vigilant, dear Juan. The moment calls for prudence, for unity, and for obedience. 3 virtues, each sharper than the last. Obedience is a virtue you've learned by necessity, but unity is now as fragile as glass. Venice lobbies relentlessly for war, pressing you with gifts, with envoys, with half-promised ships and gold. Genoa sends her bankers and spies, always a step ahead of the latest news. The Pope's legate, newly arrived, slick as olive oil, hosts candlelit meetings in his private chambers, whispering that God has destined you for another miracle. You walk the harbour at dawn, the ships bobbing on the grey water, men gathering in clumps around cook fires, faces ruddy with the first chill of autumn. Some greet you with shy pride, remembering Lepanto, others simply nod, eyes shadowed with the memory of loss. Storm coming, he says, nodding toward the east. He grins, teeth white in the growing light. Yes, but sometimes you can smell the lightning. You spend your days in council, your nights at the writing desk. Letters multiply. Venice begs for action, Rome for unity, Philip for restraint. You reply to each in turn, never promising more than you can give. You float suggestions, joint patrols, defensive alliances, a cautious show of force without open war. Some agree, some resist. All watch you for any sign of ambition. Behind closed doors, the old doubts gnaw. The soldiers love you, but the Spanish grandees see your popularity as a threat. The Venetians adore you. When it suits them, Rome courts you, then reminds you that saints do not command armies forever. You are always yourself, and yet never entirely your own. On the streets, the mood is shifting. Naples, once riotous with feasts and pageants, grows tense and wary. Food prices rise as merchant convoys vanish in the east. The churches fill with prayers for peace, but the blacksmith's shops ring late into the night as armor is repaired, blades sharpened, guns cast anew. The city feels like a ship awaiting a gale, every plank tested, every rope taut, every man bracing for impact. Your friends urge caution. Rodrigo is frankest of all. If Philip calls you home, go, he warns. He is king. You are not. Others urge boldness. Ride the tide of your fame, lead another crusade, become what the people already believe you to be. But you know the dangers. You have seen what happens to those who forget the lesson of Lepanto, that one day's glory is always paid for in the weeks and years that follow. The papal legate arranges another parade, a solemn procession from the cathedral to the docks, priests chanting and incense thick on the morning air. You walk in your armor, banners rippling, people pressing close for a touch, a blessing, a smile. You kneel at the high altar, feeling the weight of 1,000 eyes and 1,000 prayers. The bishop preaches of unity, sacrifice, vigilance. You listen, head bowed, knowing how little these words can mean when the cannons roar again. That night, you host your officers for supper in the Great Hall. The wine is good, the food better, but the talk is cautious. They toast the king, the pope, the league, and you in turn, but always with an undercurrent of watchfulness, a careful edge. Later, you and Rodrigo linger on the terrace, overlooking the moonlit city. You talk of ships, of home, of what it means to hold power for a moment in a world that refuses to be tamed. The next morning, word arrives from the Adriatic. Turkish galleys have struck a Venetian outpost, burning the docks and carrying off prisoners. The League's admirals crowd your chamber, shouting for retribution. Venice offers gold, men, ships, if only you will lead. Rome nods approval, even some Spanish captains, tired of waiting, call for action. You sense the old pulse of war rising, the itch in your hands, the hunger in your chest for the clean, hard certainty of command. But you remember your brother's letters, the wary eyes at court, the way your victories always come with a price. You weigh everything, say little, let the debate churn itself out. Afterwards, Rodrigo catches your arm in the corridor. What will you do? You look at him, feeling the old ache, love and doubt, hope and fear, all tangled. What I must, you answer, but the words taste of ash. You walk the harbour at midnight, watching the lanterns swing on the dark water, the city silent, except for the distant splash of oars. You think of Barbara, of your childhood, of Lepanto's chaos and triumph, of the men lost and the men saved. You remember what it felt like to stand at the prow of the Rill, sword in hand, the wind and spray in your face, the world for one moment yours to command. You know that moment cannot last. You know the world is changing again, and that you, bastard hero pawn, must find your place in it once more. The storm gathers on the horizon. You brace yourself for what comes next. The storm you sensed, the one Rodrigo smelled on the wind, finally arrives, not with the thunder of cannons or the crash of boarding pikes, but as a slow, inexorable tightening of the world around you. There is no one battle, no single moment when everything shatters. Instead, your life becomes a siege of caution, of whispers, of invisible lines being drawn and redrawn in the courts and streets of Naples. The Holy League, never truly one in heart, begins to fray at the seams. Venice pushes harder for war. The papal envoys flood your table with promises of salvation and threats of damnation, depending on which coin lands up. Spain's voice, your brother's voice, grows cold and clipped. Philip's letters become more direct. Return to Spain. Your presence is needed at court. You have done enough. But what does enough mean for a man like you? Is it enough to be a victor, when the victors are more feared than the vanquished? Is it enough to be a symbol, when even symbols become dangerous? Naples is uneasy. The city that once called your name in every square now watches you with the wary respect one reserves for a hunting dog that might at any moment turn wild. The markets are quieter. The old songs, sung in your honor, are replaced by careful conversation and sidelong glances. Some nights when you walk the gardens alone, you catch your own name carried in whispers on the wind. You still do your duty. You oversee the last repairs on the fleet, ensure every soldier is paid and fed, every captain given his due. You visit the wounded in the hospitals, the orphans in the church schools, the mothers who still hang faded banners from their balconies. You answer letters from old comrades, from Barbara, from men who once stood at your side on the blood-wet decks of Lepanto. Yet you sense the change, the slow pivot of the world away from you. Venice sends a new admiral, one who is polite but insists on more autonomy. The Pope's legate demands more prayers, more processions, more sacrifices for unity. The Spanish officers grow more insular, answering first to Madrid, then to you. Even Rodrigo, old and unafraid, grows cautious. Careful, lad, he tells you, his voice a rasp of smoke and memory. The higher they lift you, the further you fall. Philip's command finally comes, final and absolute. You are to return to Spain, to take up a new post, governor of Flanders, where the Protestant heresy festers and the fires of rebellion burn night and day. It is a posting wrapped in gold and iron, an honor, a test and a sentence all at once. Your departure from Naples is less than triumphant. There is no parade, No feast, no shower of laurel leaves. The streets are lined, but the faces are mostly solemn, curious, or relieved. You mount your horse at the palace gate, Rodrigo at your side, your small retinue behind you. The sun is rising, pale and uncertain. You look back only once, at the city spread below, the churches, the harbour, the endless roofs gleaming with dew. A chapter closing. The journey north is slow and silent. You pass through towns still singing of Lepanto, villages where your name is a hope against bandits and famine. You travel under heavy guard, your every move watched and recorded, every rumour traced. In Rome, the Pope receives you pomp ceremony, a blessing and a warning about the heresies of the north. You accept it all with a polite smile, a bowed head, the careful composure that has always been your armour. When you reach Madrid, Philip greets you in a private chamber. He is colder than you remember, his face lined by years of power and suspicion. He praises you, then tasks you, bring order to Flanders, restore the faith, be the king's hand. You bow, you accept. You do not ask about Naples or Lepanto or the songs that once followed you through Europe. Flanders is another war, of a different sort. Sieges, rebellions, cities in flames. You command armies, arbitrate faiths, try to impose order on a country that will not be ruled. The cold grey skies press on you, the damp seeps into your bones, the shouts of rebels echo through your dreams. You are not the young man of Lepanto anymore. You are harder, more patient, more resigned. In rare moments of quiet, you write to Barbara. Your letters are briefer now, but never less loving. You tell her of the northern mists, of the canals and windmills, of the stubbornness of the people, of your own longing for sunlight and music. She replies with news of Regensburg, her health, the songs she still sings, the small joys that endure. Her words are an anchor, a reminder that beneath the titles and the battles, you are still her son. Rodrigo is with you as long as he can be, until illness finally takes him on a wet winter night in Antwerp. You bury him by the river, a small cross marking the grave. You weep quietly, then move on. There is always more to be done. The end, when it comes, is neither heroic nor tragic, but simply tired. You fall ill, fever, cough, the old wounds aching. You linger, refusing to complain, surrounded by a few loyal men and the ghosts of 100 ships. On your last night, you dream of the sea, the wind in your hair, the salt on your lips, the roar of voices crying your name as banners snap overhead. You die as you lived, not quite a prince, not quite a king, but always, indelibly yourself. Now, as the waves of time draw gently back from the shore, let yourself drift with them. The noise and fire of battle have faded. Naples is only a distant bell, the sound softened by night and memory. You are not on a throne, not upon a quarterdeck, not surrounded by courtiers or soldiers, but on the quiet shore of your own life, the tide easing against sand worn smooth by centuries. Feel the hush settle, the old anxieties ebb away, replaced by a warmth, a stillness, as soft as the breath of the sea at dusk. Think of the golden light on the waves, the sweet, uncertain air before dawn, the comforting ache of having lived, truly lived in the heart of history. In the end, you were never just a prince or a bastard, a victor or a servant, but a witness to a world in motion, a heart that kept its own counsel. You rest, knowing that the story endures, carried by the wind, the water and the quiet pride of those who remember your name. Your battles are done. The torches have burned low, the drums are stilled, and the only song left is the gentle whisper of the sea. So let your eyes close. Let the story fade into silence, replaced by the peace you have so long earned and so rarely found. The night deepens, calm and vast. The world is safe, for now. Sleep comes at last, slow and certain as the tide. Sweet dreams.